Hi all, this is Allmighty and welcome to this video. So once again I bring you a World Championship match of 2010. It is a championship match between Veselin Topalov and Viswanathan Anand, and if you haven't been watching my videos up until now, I have covered the first 7 games and the result is 4-3 in Anand's favor at the moment, and after the last 2 games where Anand had white pieces, now Veselin Topalov comes in strong and tries to do something actually in this match, because quite honestly this is one of the last moments where he can actually go for something. He should definitely do so, because this time he has the white pieces and he should prepare something. So yeah, nothing much to say. Up until now, Vishy was the one who mostly had some novelties. He had some new moves. He always tried to do something different to actually rock off Topalov off his game. And yeah, that's pretty much it. While Topalov, on the other hand, kind of started in round 7 with some novelties, with some changed variations, where he tried to go in a very active play, but in the end he was the one once again battling for a draw. It was a draw for a long time, but he kind of slipped at the end, but okay, it was a fine game. Yeah, nothing much has changed considering the first move. It is still d4. Topalov is this time the one who plays it, and Vishy stays true to the defense that helped him in round 3 and round 5 to actually draw the game. He plays d5, and after c4 we have c6, the Slav defense. Knight to f3, knight to f6, knight to c3, and pawn captures on c4. a4 not allowing b5 ideas, and now bishop to f5 not allowing e4. Knight to e5, e6, and now f3 preparing e4. c5, e4, bishop to g6, and bishop to e3. Pawn captures on d4, queen captures on d4, queen captures on d4, bishop captures on d4, knight from f to d7, knight captures on d7, knight captures on d7, bishop to c4. And I'll just quickly going through these moves, because it is the same kind of thing that happened in game 3 and game 5, and actually once again Vishy is the one who changes the first move. He plays rook to c8. Not the first move, but it was in this situation the move 13. Usually he's just been playing a6, stopping bishop to b5, knight to b5, but this time with rook to c8 he is attacking the bishop. Bishop to b5 played, and now a6. Bishop to d7, king to d7, and now king to e2. So improving the position of the king, something just that was played quite often in the games 3 and quite often in this match. And now we have f6, the standard idea. Also how white play king to e2 to include the rooks into the game. Now f6 to include the bishop into the game. And now rook from h to d1. A little bit different approach in this situation, of course. It is a different game now, since the bishop has been exchanged. White doesn't have the bishop pair, black has, but still black is the one who is in a passive position. Rook has moved from the h-file. It doesn't seem that he is going to go for some pawn pushes and expanding even more on the king side. Actually, he goes immediately for the center. And now we have to move the king. It isn't clear if, you can play king to c7, but it could run into some trouble. So Anand decided to bring it back to e8, which is a safe square for the king at the moment. And now a5. And a5 is a move that was actually considered a novelty. So Topalov, as it should be, is the one. He is currently just 1 point. Vishy is 1 point ahead of him, and he should be the one who is making creating novelties, showing new moves, and a5 is definitely one of them. Usually, what has been played is bishop to b6, or something like, I don't know, rook from a to c1, putting the other rook on the open file. But now a5 is once again a very natural move that is played, this time stabilizing the queen side for white, bishop to b6, quite simply preparing it, and locking it at this b7 pawn. And if this pawn is captured, then white will definitely have a lot of chances on the queen side. So here what we have is bishop to e7, and after this bishop to b6. Once again, white is the one, when Topalov plays, who has a lot of activity here. He has much more space. This time, once again, Topalov needs to show how he can actually use it. Rook to f8 And why was rook to f8 played? Well, you cannot play king to f7 because this allows rook to d7, infiltrating of the rook, and rook just won't be having any trouble capturing this pawn on b7. So this is why rook to f8 is played with an idea of rook to f7, bishop to f8, and rook to d7. Exchange one pair of rooks, you are getting closer and closer to a draw. Rook from a to c1, and now even f5. Yeah, Anand just wants to open up the position. He has the bishop pair, and this would mean something to him. But we have e5. Of course, Topalov doesn't want to do it. Bishop to g5 attacking the rook, and now we have bishop to e3 blocking it. Topalov was fine with the exchanging of the bishops. Of course, you get rid of black's bishop pair, and black is left with his pawns which are on light squares, and after king to e3, you could say that white is in a better position here, but still he needs to just simply work for the win. But Wishy probably didn't like this idea of having such a passive position, so in this situation he played f4, and he played it quite quickly. But this simply puts him in a worse position, because now knight to e4 is coming, and it comes with a tempo. So black doesn't have a chance to actually capture either the knight on e4, nor to capture the bishop on e3, because a rook to c8 is coming with a tempo, picking up this rook, and after that the other rook. And in the end, white will be the one up the exchange. So here a rook has to capture in c1, but this allows knight to d6, an intermediate move. King to d7, and now bishop captures on c1, going out of the threat. Now white is the one who has the upper hand, having this very nice knight on this d6 square, and also the only thing he needs to do now is include the bishop into the game, and he will be definitely better. King moves from the open d file so that there is no, for example, knight to e4 check, picking up the bishop, and after this bishop to d2. Remaneuvering the bishop to c3, bishop to e7, and now, yeah, rook to c1 first check. King comes to d7, bishop to c3, and here it was actually Anand who, yeah, just Topalov allowed him to actually go for a draw, because here he simply captured on d6. It does bring him a little bit of a worse position, but he will go into an endgame where you have opposite color bishops, and which is with just going out of this such a passive position, this would feel like a win for Anand. So after bishop captured on d6, you don't capture immediately, but first you play a rook to d1, because you would want to have a rook on d6. Bishop to f5, and now h4, expanding first on the king side. G6. And this was a move that baffled a lot of people, because in opposite color bishop endgame you shouldn't push the pawns, because you will only create weaknesses in your position. So it was really strange that Anand played this, because it allows actually the king all of these dark squares when this dark square bishop is captured, and it's making a path for the king, which could create weaknesses and maybe some trouble for black. So definitely a move that shouldn't been played. You can play, I don't know, rook to c8 maybe, king to e7 for example, and just leave the pawn b. But here, okay, g6 was played, and now rook to d6 by Topalov. King moves to c8, and now bishop to d2, going for this pawn. To go for the opposite color bishop endgame. Here Anand played rook to d8, bishop to f4, rook captures, pawn captures. And yeah, it is an opposite color bishop endgame where white is a pawn up. And that usually means that it is a draw, because just one pawn shouldn't be enough. There are positions where even 3 pawns aren't enough for the side who has the pawns with the opposite color bishops to win. So one pawn is definitely drawish, and Anand was counting on that, and this is why he played those exchanges. But of course Topalov is the one to ask, because he has that pawn and he definitely wants to try and get a win out of this game. So first we have king to d7. What is important is to improve the position of the king. King to e3, and now bishop to f5. Moving the bishop out of the way, king to d4, and this allows the king to infiltrate just a little bit until the 5th rank, and black of course needs to deal with this. King to e8, king to e5, and king to f7. d7 isn't possible just yet because king to e7 and you will pick up this pawn, and this pawn is like the major threat to black, so you don't want to give it up just yet. So it was actually after king to f7 that bishop to e3 was played. So let me just stop here for a moment and talk about the position. Here, what white needs to do, he needs to, as I said, infiltrate the opponent's position. It would be nice to have the king on the sixth rank somewhere, for example on f6, because from there he could maybe control more squares and maybe go for the capture of at least one of the pawns. And maybe that will improve his chances of winning this game. While on the other hand, black doesn't have to move the pawns. As you can see, most of his pawns are already on light squares. He has a light square bishop, and one thing he has to keep in mind is this pawn, which is the most dangerous pawn from white's camp. And if he keeps an eye on these pawns, if he doesn't move the king too far away, it should be enough. But okay, let's see what happened later in the game. First, bishop to a4, which of course is the best move, just keeping an eye on this pawn. King to f4, you want to try maybe move in from this side. Bishop to b5, bishop to c5, king to f6, and bishop to d4. Actually, at this point, Anand maybe had a really nice move, which could force a draw. e5 here, sacrificing a pawn. After bishop to e5, play king to e6. After king moves to e4, so you want to move it to move the bishop away in order to simply move the bishop out of the way so that you can push g4 and maybe h5, create another passed pawn. Here it is stopped after king to e4. This is stopped by bishop to f1, bishop to e2, and or even bishop to f1 immediately. Bishop to e2 is better because if g3 or g4 you cannot capture, even though. But here, sorry, I misspoke there. So bishop to e2, and it forces kind of g3 from white. And here the thing is, you don't want to capture, of course, because after king captures, king to e5 isn't possible because of d7. But this move kind of forces the bishop to stay on this a couple of squares to keep an eye on this pawn. The king doesn't have to move from e6. There is no way how white can actually infiltrate. The only thing that you have to do from now on, you just move the pawns, bishop to b5 on this diagonal, maybe on this diagonal here, and it is really difficult for white to push through. So after bishop to d4, e5 could have been played, sacrificing a pawn for a better game, but we saw king to f7. So back with the same idea. King to g5, and now bishop to c6. Keeping an eye on these pawns, king to h6 and king to g8, defending the pawn. h5 and bishop to e8. The idea of capturing the pawn, but first we have king to g5, and of course now pawn captures isn't possible because of king to f6. Now the threat is to capture this pawn or play king to e7. Whatever white plays, next move will be d7, and black is losing this game. So here after king to g5, first we have king to f7, and now king back to h6. King to g8 and bishop to c5. Trying another idea, just making some moves. d7 is still not possible because of simply capture, but here pawn captures on h5 was played. King to g5, king to g7 now, and bishop to d4 check. King to f7, he could capture, but white didn't. He played bishop to e5 to not allow e5 now, and h4 was played. King to h4, and now king to g6. Even the position of the king is now improved. King to g4, bishop to b5, and king to f4. So as you can see, it is a draw. Both players making some moves, hoping that the other will make a mistake. But there is not a lot of things that one or the other can look forward to, especially Topalov here. King to f7, you can simply just move here with the king. There is no worry that white will infiltrate. If there is a problem, if you don't want to move the king, you can also move the bishop somewhere. King to g5, and actually it was in this position where Anand could have just simply played bishop to f1, for example, then for g4 or g3, bishop to e2, defend or play f4, something like this. He could have played bishop to e8 simply, just keeping the bishop on this diagonal, not allowing d7, but he played the only move that he cannot play in this situation, and that was bishop to c6. Because this allowed king to h6, king to g8, g4, and actually it was in this position that Anand resigned the game. And this was really, really strange to me, because after, probably he was tired after this was their third game in a row with 50 or more moves included, with a lot of time spent on the clock. Yeah, probably it was just he was just too tired, because make a mistakes such as this one, it is probably one of the worst mistakes made in a World Chess Championship match. Why is this such a problem? Well, if you capture bishop, you cannot capture, of course, bishop to f3 because of d7, and d8 is queen, and this is unstoppable. So only thing you can do is probably move the king. Yeah, this is the only thing you can do. If you move the bishop somewhere here, then the pawns will be pushed. If you move the king to f7, then king to h7. Now bishop can capture on f3 because d7 is met with king to e7, but now g5. g6, g7, g8, bishop to e4 stopping for the moment, and king to h6. Bishop to f5 still keeping an eye on it, but g6 is played. Bishop to g6, d7, you have to keep an eye on it, but now king captures on g6, and after king captures on d7, king comes to f7. These pawns are on dark squares, they can be defended. You want to keep this pawn to push him to promotion. Of course, you don't want to keep this pawn, because the square where the pawn goes out is the opposite of the color of the bishop. Just if you didn't know that, then yeah, you can watch one of my endgame videos. That is also definitely a draw. So yeah, Topalov managed to level the match, and after round 8 it is now 4-4, and we are back at the start, with Topalov definitely with a psychological advantage now going into the rest of the games, and he will try to maybe win one other and then become the world championship. So if you want to find out what happened until the end, stay tuned to this coverage. That being said, I would like to thank you for watching this video, and I will see you next time.